Update on your J6 video. It's probably coming out after the. It's probably coming out after because the thing is, the guy can rush it, but like, why the? There's like so much work that's been dumped into this. Why make it a video? And a ton of other people made videos covering the same topic. So I would rather have it done well. So it'll probably come out in a few weeks or whatever.
I disagree. I don't think the argument that black people disproportionately suffer from the ID thing is a good argument.
Why?
I think it kind of comes off as race.
It's maybe if you're retarded.
Because I think it was pretty easily weaponized as race, and I think it's pretty easily demonstrated as well. I think most people in cities do tend to have ID. They can't really live
If you were to
without
take
it,
a guess
right?
and you were to try to guess which groups of people do you think you're more likely to have an ID if you're a minority or if you're a white person?
I think it would be more likely to be people who live in rural environments, not people who live in cities.
Is that true? I've never heard that in my life. Is that actually true?
I think that's probably what it's going to come down to. Because in a city, you got to have ID. You need it to survive. You need it to get around. You need to buy things. You need to just get function in a city, right?
Unless you're like getting city services, what do you need an ID for in a city?
You're going to need it to pay for bills. You're going to need it to get into qualifying for various programs and such, especially
yeah, well,
if
so
you're
city
poor.
services programs, yes, you probably need an ID. For paying bills, you don't need an ID. I don't know where we have an idea from.
You're probably going to need it for assistance for various programs, for covering for bills, for covering for medical, stuff like that. So, yeah, it's something that you're not really going to be able to function without, right?
No, you can absolutely function without ID. It's not good. It's suboptimal. Most people probably have IDs, I guess. Most people can probably get IDs. It just seems, for the understanding that I have, is it's just slightly more burdensome to minorities than it is to white people, because white people are just more likely to be in a better socioeconomic position to where like they'll have an ID for like a driver's license, or they'll have an ID like a student ID for a school because they go to college or whatever. But if you don't do any of these things, if you drive illegally, if you walk to work, if you take the bus, like you might just like not have an ID. It's not that like minorities can't get them. It was just like statistically speaking, people that like the people that won't have one are just more likely to be minorities. Is my understanding.
There's an interesting little piece. Remember that guy from Fox News who would go on the street and like interview people and say, "Is this actually true? You know, this is what liberals say about people, right?" And he did that whole thing with black people with ID, and it was a piece that actually went off pretty well because it did show, at least from the perspective that he's showing, right? He's only going to show the people that are, contradicting what liberals say, obviously, right? But it does give a good, clear demonstration from that perspective that this shit seems pretty racist. So he's interviewing a bunch of black people on the streets and saying, hey, this is what liberals are saying, that black people don't have IDs, that it's hard for them to get IDs, that they struggle to get IDs, etc. And they're going to say, no, I have an ID. How would I function without one? I need one for all this kind of stuff, right?
We keep saying you need one for all this kind of stuff. What do you need an ID for? You don't use it. I don't know when the last time I show my ID at the airport. I don't know, besides the airport, like when the last time I've ever shown my ID is for anything.
Well, if you're going to be buying something that's going to be, for instance, a lot of things that you're going to buy are going to require ID for verifying your age, right? So if you're
For what, alcohol?
Buying alcohol, buying cigarettes, buying, or qualifying, like I said before, for various programs for subsidies.
Okay, you keep saying, you keep bringing, if you're qualifying
Medical
for a
stuff.
state program, yes, okay. Alcohol
Medical
and cigarettes
stuff.
you get from a friend, right? You don't need to go buy cigs and alcohol yourself. And depending on what corner store you're going to, they're not going to fucking ID you. They don't give a fuck. If you look like you're 30 or older, if you look like you're 25 or older, they won't.
Depending entirely on your friends, though, right? You're still going to be independent to some degree.
Yeah, that's typically how
And
poor
then
people
medical
live.
stuff.
Is poor people bum off their friends and stuff. Poor people don't usually live in isolated shacks. They usually, like when you talk about like paying bills and stuff, you'll be renting with a friend or whatever. You just give them money for bills and shit. Like you're not just like living in a shack isolated on the street with no
But that's
contact
poor
with the world.
people.
Yeah,
That's
who
poor
are more
people
likely
in
to
general.
generally be minorities, right? Like proportionately.
Proportionately, I could see that as well. But I would say that that's still if you're going to say that this is going to disproportionately affect black people, that's still kind of moving in that direction. It's almost like what Biden said that one time. It's like when kind of pigeonholing black people as being poor, right? Even though you can say that, yes, you're going to see a disproportionate number of poor people are going to be minority, you're using an argument that's kind of painting them as like, oh, well, these people are not going to be, they're the ones being affected by this because they're less capable, right? Or because they're all poor. And so it does come off as a more racist argument, and it is more easily weaponized against you. And it isn't really a very good, effective argument. I don't think there is a good argument to push back against this. I think it would be pretty efficacious to say, why not just give everybody just a voter ID number that everybody has?
I agree. I agree that you should give. Yeah, I think everybody should be given like either a mandated ID or something like that that you could just use for free. I think it would eliminate a lot of these problems. But I don't know why I would run from reality because I'm scared of looking racist. Like, why do you think black people don't get into college as much as white people?
There are going to be a number of factors for that.
What do you think is the biggest factor? The largest factor by far?
One is going to be economics.
No, the largest factor by far why they don't get into a college.
Largest factor?
Yeah.
Economics.
Wrong. It's because they're dumber. They don't have the same reading scores, the same math scores, and they don't do as well on tests. Like, bar none. It's not even close to anything else. Economics? No, that's way, way, way down the road, right? If you want to run from that issue, though, right? Then what are we even talking about? There's no
environmental.
No.
So much is going to be
yes. There are other issues that factor into that, but the reason why is at the point of applying for college, it's because they're not as smart as their peers. Right? So how do you fix that? There's a whole multitude of issues that you can address inside the household. That might be with family. It might be with food assistance. It might be with childcare. Outside the household, it might be in the schools. It might be with transportation to schools. It might be with after-school programs. There's a whole bunch of things you can transfer or to do outside of it. But you can't pretend that a particular problem doesn't exist because it makes you sound racist or bad. That doesn't make any sense. You can't even have a real conversation anymore.
Well, to that particular argument, I mean, there's other factors going into that as well. Like the way things are marketed to people in lower income neighborhoods is very different as well.
Doesn't matter. All of that is like, we're talking like 5 to 10% max. It's not that black people aren't going to college because they don't run enough ads in those neighborhoods. It's because they aren't as qualified because of a multitude of other reasons. But at the end of the day, that's we can't forget like why like affirmative action and stuff like that exists to move people on the margins or to give people more to aspire for. Not so that we can pretend that like, oh, well, the reason why these people don't get here is just because of like bad police and bad admissions officers.
Yeah, there's obviously going to be a lot of environmental
No,
factors.
you keep saying that. It's that at the point of admissions, the reason is that they're not as qualified, right? Do we agree with that? The reason why...
Yeah, sure.
Yes, okay, that's the reason why. Yeah.
Yes.
Or why white people don't get into as good a schools as Asian people do generally, because they're not as qualified, right? So so when it comes to voter ID stuff, right, my understanding is, and I could be wrong, maybe there's data that shows this wrong, my understanding is that a minority is just less likely to have an ID for a multitude of reasons than a person who's not a minority. That's it. Now, why they might not have one, or if they're capable of getting one, there might be a whole like litany of reasons why they could or couldn't, but that I could think of something as stupid as if you're working two jobs, it might be more difficult to go to the DMV to renew your driver's license. So maybe a minority is more likely to drive on an expired license than somebody who is more socioeconomically privileged and can like take a day off work or just has like free time to go to the DMV and wait for 7 hours to get a fucking license renewal. Maybe that might be a thing, right? It's not because they're not capable or because they're genetically inferior or because we're racist. It's just the facts of life.
Mm-hmm. I do know that it is a common thing also. Driving on an expired license, much more likely to be the case if you're a minority. That's definitely a stat I've heard before, or I've heard quoted before.
Sure. So I think that like that's the issue when people talk about voter IDs. If they paired that with we should make it so everybody can get an ID incredibly easily, then it's like, oh, okay, cool. But conservatives never seem to have that half of the argument, which makes the rest of the argument very suspect.
It's an argument, though. The problem with using this particular argument is I feel like it oftentimes can be a losing battle. Like I feel like it can actually be counterproductive, right? So if that's something that can be used to paint like, look, this is what liberals think of black people. This is what liberals think of minorities, right? I don't think it works in our advantage for actually getting...
No, fuck that. Make the conservatives make their
subject.
argument. Why do we have to crawl to them every single time and beg them for absolution? No, make them make the fucking argument. These motherfuckers are trying to rig their elections in their states. These motherfuckers are getting thrown before judges and they won't even own up to their fucking voter fraud. Okay, like that Tina Peters trying to fuck with her election.
Then?
It's not a bait. It's not a bait.
What is the problem? Where is the necessity? Right?
Wait, where's the bait? States right now, if you want to have a voter ID in the state, you can do it. And aren't conservatives the ones that talk about the importance of states' rights all the time? They literally think that abortion is murder, but they're still willing to leave that up to the state. You don't think that the state should be allowed to decide if they want voter ID or not? Some 30, 40 states already require some form of identification. Like 30 states require picture ID. Like if a state wants it, they can vote on it, right? Why do conservatives make it such a huge deal? Why do they act like no state in the United States has a required photo ID voter law?
Well, the bait that you're taking is you're playing into something that isn't necessary and giving them an argument that they can weaponize against you, and then to say, look, this is what the liberals think of you guys. Right?
That it's harder for them to get an ID?
Yeah. And it gets weaponized as, hey, look, they're racist. They think you're dumber. They think you can't get IDs, stuff like that, right?
Why would I try to live so much within the criticisms of somebody like that? What, like, I'm just speaking reality and facts. Like, if there's a politician running and I was crafting a message, I might be more careful about it. I might qualify it more. But I mean, like, the number, the facts are the facts. Like, I'm not going to
dance around the facts. Sure. I get that. It's just, it seems like it's an unnecessary thing to step into when it's not even necessary for the ID in the first place. But like, if you wanted to pitch an ID system, just be like, here, you can make it real simple. Everybody gets an ID, a flat, simple system.
Yeah, I said that I literally said that today. I've said that every single time. Yeah, make a national ID system if you want to have voter ID so bad across every single state. Make a national ID system.
Which I don't think there's a really good, like, I don't.
When was the last conservative you've ever heard suggest that ever? Mainstream conservative, either pundit or politician.
No, they don't.
Crazy. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that interesting that not a single one has made it so that it would be easier for people to get IDs, but they only talk about excluding people without the types of IDs they want? Isn't that interesting?
Now, obviously, they've got a different motive. They want to exclude. They want to make more loopholes because they don't want people voting more liberal. So they want to find ways to wall out the people who would vote more liberal.
Okay, wait. So if you have that understanding that their goal is to just exclude people from voting, why the fuck am I crawling to the person who's trying to be excluding people from voting?
That wouldn't be crawling to them. That would just be, I'm just saying, don't take their bait. Don't play into what they're trying to spin.
Okay, I don't agree that it's a bait. I don't think that reality and facts are bait, but
I don't think normally they would be, but I think sometimes someone can set the stage in order for you to use reality and facts in a way that can be weaponized against you.
Well, if somebody tries it in debate, then let them do it, and I will have fun eviscerating them on stage. Tell the next person I debate to do it. We can go. I'm A-OK 1,000,000,000% taking up that argument, 100%.
I'd be interested to see, like, I haven't actually looked into this myself. I've lived both in city areas and in rural areas. The area where I've known that people drove without licenses pretty consistently were in rural areas, right, where people didn't have IDs.
Why? Why? What? Really?
Yeah. So
I hold on. If you're driving on
rural areas,
that's not necessarily true. But hold on. You don't. First of all, if you're living in a rural area, okay. Remember, I'm from Nebraska. Okay. You don't need a license to drive on non-public roads. So it's pretty common that kids are like, throwing the phone books on the truck benches and driving their dad's trucks and shit. That happens on the farm and shit. You can do that. You're allowed to do that. You can drive tractors and shit, or at least I did in the place I was at, without a license or anything because you're not on a public road. But the idea that farmers and stuff don't have IDs, I mean, I guess that could be true. I've never heard that.
I'm talking about farmers in general, but just like rural in general, right? So not just farm areas. But yeah, rural America is area I've lived in before. I've lived in rural California where people it was not uncommon to know people that just did not have IDs, didn't even have Social Security.
I can't prove this, but just based on my personal experience, this is a huge feeling, and I could be totally fucking wrong on this. My feeling is that it's probably 1 billion times easier to get an ID in a rural area than it is in a heavy city area. And the only thing I'm basing that off of, and I could be totally wrong here, but the only thing I'm basing that off of is fucking wait times. There's a reason why my plates on my car are 7 years expired, and it's because when I tried to schedule an appointment in Glendale to update my tags and get a license in Florida, and the wait time was like 4 months. To be fair, that was COVID. Okay. When I moved from Glendale to Culver City, I tried to go into the DMV to do it, and I found out that if you go in after 8:01, there's like 150 people in the fucking DMV. And like, fuck that. I finally did get my license and everything in Florida. Me and Melina went, even with a reservation. I think we were at the DMV for 3 to 4 hours. So like, the idea that it's easy to get an idea to say, I mean, if you want to take a whole day off and do it, but I mean, I never remember wait times like this in fucking Omaha, although to be fair, Omaha is still a city, and maybe in some rural areas, maybe it is really bad. I don't know. I haven't lived in like super rural out there fucking areas.
You have to drive a couple hours to get to the place where you have to get your ID. It's just kind of like, why would I bother?
Why do you have to? I seriously doubt that there are that many places in the U.S. where you have to drive a few hours to find a public office or whatever.
Well, there's not a ton of population out there, that's for certain. They're not going to be the population centers.
If you're in a city size 1,000 people, you probably have like a DMV or something there to get a license. Wait, do you think that it's like a house like every 20 miles?
Usually you're going to be probably driving less than less than 2 hours, I would say, in most rural areas, but in some cases, windy
My guess
roads
would be
can't take them
in
that
the
fast.
if I had to guess, pulling a number on my ass, 90% of people that live in rural America are within 30 minutes of a DMV. That'd be my guess. 2 hours?
Yeah, probably. Within 90 minutes, roughly. It depends.
No, not
If you're
90 minutes. I
living
said
out in,
30 minutes. I said 30 minutes. Within 30 minutes
30
of the DMV.
minutes. Possibly, it depends. Like, I would say like Gasi is pretty rural. That takes about 30 minutes to drive into Crescent City. So yeah, we're going to be within that. But
Wait,
like,
in what city are we talking about?
Gasi. And they drive about 30 minutes to get into Crescent City, which is where the nearest DMV would be for them. Like,
What
where
is
I
Gasi
lived, I
in
lived out
California?
north. Yeah. Where I lived out north of Nevada City. It took about 2 hours to drive to Nevada City to get
Wait,
to the
how do you
DMV.
spell this fucking city's name?
Gasquet.
Unincorporated community. Is this even like a real city?
I didn't say city, I said rural. It's rural California. I didn't say city. I'm not talking about cities. I was talking about rural.
Okay, I can't speak to these types of environments, but how many people even live out in
That's
these?
what I'm saying. It's more common, I think, in rural America to not have IDs just because of the complications and the lack of infrastructure, right?
Okay, I mean, then conservatives should bring that argument up instead.
If that would make more sense to me. But yeah, sorry, I'm a little sick.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's, and I've lived in pretty deeply rural environments before myself and lived in cities. So I've seen sort of the comparison. Obviously, this is me speaking from personal experience. I'm not working with data here. And living in the rural environment, I knew a lot more people who just did not have IDs or even social security numbers sometimes, because sometimes they weren't even like they weren't even being born in a hospital sometimes, right?
This has got to be incredibly rare. This is
Yeah.
this is insanely rare. Also, hold on, I'm just checking this, and you did say this to be fair, but yeah, even this Gasi place, it's like way the fuck out in the middle of nowhere, is 24 minutes from from Crescent City for
30 minutes. Yeah, it's a 30-minute drive roughly. Yeah, it's roads are a little windy, so you can't take them that fast, and it's a single lane. But
So even on this like way the fuck out there place, population 600, it's within 30 minutes of a DMV.
yeah, and where I lived, it would take about typically about like an hour and a half or something. I'd say maybe like 2 hours if the roads were iced to get into Nevada City where I lived, because I lived out north of Nevada City, up in the Sierra Mountains. But so that's why I think it makes more sense that rural environments would suffer more from this than cities due to infrastructural differences, right? One having more infrastructure, one having less. And also speaking from personal experience. But
Okay, and
it
then
would be
so
interesting to
if
see those
just
numbers.
somebody link me this, okay? Maybe if there are other numbers, I would just change my mind because I'm not super attached to this issue. These are just what I always thought to be true. So February in 2015 is when this Project Vote memo was made by Vanessa M. Perez, PhD. I don't know. Maybe it's unreliable or maybe, I don't know. This memo presents an overview of government-issued photo identification ownership based on the 2012 American National Election Study, ANES. Rates of identification ownership are highest among white individuals, while other ethnic groups disproportionately lack photo ID. 13% of blacks, 10% of Hispanics, but only 5% of whites lack photographic identification. So it seems like it would be disproportionate than, I guess, black people and Hispanic people. Like it just seems to be true.
It is disproportionately affecting them. It is 13% is a pretty high percentage.
Well, it's not even about it being high or low. It's just that it disproportionately impacts them.
Disproportionate effects, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. It just seems like I feel like you need a positive argument for voter ID if it's going to disproportionately impact one group of people. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I always bring this up. I literally did today. I think that if you want to do voter ID, I think it's fine, but like you should pair it with like we're going to offer an ID if you want to make it a requirement, because then it makes you look a lot less motivated in your reasoning.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the right is coming from a very motivated perspective. They clearly want to wall people out. They don't seem to want to have a simple system like other countries do. We're just, okay, you've you belong here, you're a resident. Here you go. Here's your, voter ID or whatever, or here's your voter number. Apparently, people are freaking out about how California's been just mailing out ballots to everybody who's here, who just has a residence here. So I don't know what that's going to do with, with things that are currently going on. Apparently, a lot of people who are sitting on the center are considering voting for Trump now because of that. I mean, obviously, California is still going to go, to Kamala Harris, but maybe in the next cycle around, we're going to see more people going more to Trump. But it seems like there's a lot of panic going on around.
Why? Why is there panic?
I don't know. It seems like a weird thing to me because I just don't see how that's really going to affect anything.
What's going to affect anything?
Well, if you're a resident of California, you get to vote, right? You can vote on local stuff at the very least. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get a ballot. Like, for instance, my roommate has
I'm saying, why would people get mad if they send you out a ballot preemptively if you're registered to vote in the state?
I don't know why. There's a whole bunch of people freaking out about it for some reason and talking about like it's a big issue that the ballots are being mailed out, that people are getting mail-in ballots just for being residents here. And I'm like, hasn't that always been the case? If you're registered to vote and you're a resident here, you should have it. I guess it's the fact that everybody's been signed up for mail-in ballots automatically, but that's been going on basically since the pandemic now. But now everybody's suddenly making a bunch of noise about it. So
yeah, I think it's just it's a baseless conservative talking point that for no reason is to just make people afraid of ballots. If they weren't doing the preemptive mail-in ballots, they would be attacking mail-in ballots, period. If mail-in ballots were gone, they'd be attacking early voting. They tried this in North Carolina. If it wasn't early voting, they'd attack too many polling places. If it it's like...
I'm assuming somebody ran some sort of campaign on it or something because I'm just suddenly hearing a whole bunch of noise about it.
Yeah, wait, hold on. That was all of the big lie. That was the entire Trump campaign was saying that mass mail-in ballots or mass mailing out of ballots was going to be leading to election rigging. That was the whole Trump. That was one of the largest Trump talking points in 2020.
Yeah, well, but suddenly people are talking about it over the last couple of weeks. So
probably because Trump and all them are stirring up the same bullshit over the mail-in ballot stuff.
I guess so. It's just an insane panic. But, oh well. Well, anyways, I'll let you get back to your stream.
Okay. I'll be careful.
All right. Take care.
Do you think this Trump MSG rally is going to make any difference in the election? Who knows? I don't know. Do you think that ballot destruction will become widespread or just a few cases that we've seen so far? Again, who knows? That Bill Yu podcast made me so sad what happened there. Yeah, fuck me, dude. I realized that he was so into like that libertarian pipeline and all of that. Jesus. We need deflation and a gold standard. Hold on. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, Jesus. I think business people have weirdly dumb takes. If you want bad econ takes, go to CNBC. Yeah, maybe, bro. This used to be a thing a long time ago, and it's like coming back with Elon. That idea that engineers can do everything. I'm sincerely trying to find this. Can somebody steelman me? Can somebody give me one good video where Elon legitimately sounds like he understands like principles of engineering or understands like it says something insightful or intelligent about engineering, please? Because I racked my brain on this after I talked to Tom. Because I was like, have I ever heard a video where I've thought that Elon's like, oh, that's a really good point. I never thought of it. Like, oh, okay, that's pretty insightful. He's definitely like, I know that there are like stories of him sleeping on the Tesla floor and all that. But is there actually, because when I heard him speak to the that programmer that worked at Twitter, that rewrote so much of Elon to me in that I rewrote him completely as a CEO. I'm like, oh, this guy doesn't know anything about engineering whatsoever. Nothing in software development is unique to software development like workflows. It's not like, if anything, it feels like software development has just rediscovered principles of engineering that have been known in other fields. Like, oh fuck, maybe it's the measure twice and cut once can actually apply to code as well, right? Who knows? Like so I'm curious if there's anything, just like a single video or something of Elon speaking about something or doing something, not hearsay, not a person saying like, oh yeah, Elon is so smart, but like something where he's talking like, oh yeah, it seems like this guy really knows what the fuck he's. Oh, pertaining to SpaceX in this interview. Okay, please.
Hi, it's me, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut. Welcome back to Starbase, Texas. This is, of course, where SpaceX is building their Starship vehicles. This is part one of two parts. In part one, we're going to take you around the factory, see what's new, see the ships, see the boosters, see Star Factory from the inside for the first time, and just learn a lot along the way. So stay tuned for part two, where we'll take you out to the launch pad, and we'll also follow up with Elon after the launch and see how it went. So without further ado, let's go on another tour with Elon Musk. Cool. So yeah, as we were saying, I mean, obviously a lot has changed in the last couple of years. I mean, this is all. Maybe in theory, I don't know. I mean,
it's exactly the same. It hasn't changed a bit.
That was always the criticism of Steve Jobs too, that he's just got big ideas, none of the actual technical know-how. I think Elon's similar. Yeah, but I don't think I don't think Steve Jobs claimed differently, did he? I don't know if anybody thought that or maybe they did at one point in time, that Steve Jobs is a really good engineer or whatever.
What once was tense is now a permanent looking factory.
Yeah, it used to be intense, and now it's in a building.
Yeah.
So we've got this, I think, pretty good looking rocket factory building that we've almost completed. Completed the exterior.
Hold on, I'm grabbing a Red Bull. 1 sec. I think Steve Jobs thought very highly of himself. Yeah, but did he think of himself as like a programmer, or software developer, or whatever? Maybe he was. I'm not. Like he could have. I'm genuinely asking, maybe.
This will enable us to have serialized production of the rocket, especially the ship, which would ultimately be made, long term, probably be making 1,000 a year of the ship. So,
1,000 a year.
Yeah, well, got to build a city on Mars.
Yeah, that's insane to think about.
Yeah, I mean, we may not build 1,000 a year right here, but I think this is.
Okay, so Dan doesn't lose his fucking mind. Here. A congressional letter has been sent to the leadership of both Amazon and Twitch to sound the alarm over the amplification of anti-Semitism on Twitch. Sean Piker, who is subscribed to Orthodox views as inbred and a Jewish man as a bloodthirsty pig, is the anti-Semitic voice of systematically anti-Semitic platform led by Dan Clancy. The time has come to hold Sean Piker and Dan Clancy accountable. There you go.
This is capable of 100 a year.
Really?
Sure.
Wow.
It's only a ship every 3 days.
And
that's nothing.
Well, and it's funny because now, if you think about it, even Falcon 9 these days, you're producing in second.
X kills me says that's APAC money at work, dollars. While Destiny goes on about the integrity of democracy and Russian influence in online content, his community has actually been appropriated by foreign interest groups. So one, APAC is not an interest group funded foreignly. If you mean that they're interested in Israel, maybe. Number one, so that is the APAC comparing to like Russian influence that's covert is stupid because Russia influence in the United States is covert. They don't declare who they are and nobody declares that they're working for them. And number three, I'm not taking APAC money. I don't get money from APAC or anything, but okay. You can have an interest that aligns with another country sometimes. That doesn't mean you're appropriated by them. Like that is possible. I don't know if X kills me got too into the MAGA shit, and now he's like a Jew hater or whatever, but...
Second stage about every 2 days. And a few years ago, that would have been impossible. No one would have imagined Yeah, they're building.
This year we'll make almost 200 upper stages of Falcon.
That's
and,
unbelievable.
Next year, probably over 200.
That's
So
that's like a cadence of people I don't think are, just even you can't even imagine. You can't even fathom that kind of output like that. It's just
Falcon
crazy.
9 is actually a heavy lift vehicle. So it's there's roughly 40,000 pounds to orbit.
Yeah.
So which is in normal rocket language would be a heavy lift.
Yeah.
So now Starship's going to be able to do 100 tons to orbit with Starship 2, maybe a little more than that. With Starship 3, like at the 9-meter diameter, essentially when the 9-meter diameter is sort of fully stretched out to what ends up being from 120 meters total length to probably 140 or something like that. Then this is like a lot of optimizations, engine improvements, heat shield mass improvements, reducing the amount of propellant needed for landing. Kind of basically do all the things that we've somewhat done with Falcon 9, and you get to a pretty efficient vehicle. I think we'll be able to do over 200 tons to useful orbit with Starship. So, and that's with full reusability.
People always say it's not fair to expect a CEO to know all the technical details of the company, but forget that this is exactly what Elon speaks and acts like. Yeah, I'm not expecting him to, but he says it all the time. He can't even admit AIPAC's interest is in Israel. So what would you expect? He calls it a maybe. AIPAC has an interest in Jewish people and in maintaining like U.S. like alignment with Israel. Sure, I'm not funded by AIPAC though. What does AIPAC have to do with anything I'm doing? I don't know what the point of even. But AIPAC is also like a publicly known thing in the United States. They don't like secretly fund people, or if they do, I haven't heard about it.
But it's a full reusability.
Which is insane. So that's twice the Saturn V with full reusability. And full and rapid reusability. So it's the booster and the ship are coming back to the launch site.
Right. Should we take a look at what's going on in there? So, so as far as, we're seeing all this, talking about even version 1, maybe be able to do less than 100. But is version 1 really even going to, I feel like version 1 in my head
version 1 is just to the point of, and really kind of Starship, we're version 1.67, I don't know.
Right,
it's like we're like many iterations through on version 1.
Yeah.
So
it's just a canvas. It's a test experiment still at this phase. It's just
I think he's saying Richie Torres is a Zog and being funded by. Oh, Richie Torres? I don't know. He might be getting funded by AIPAC. So what? What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
I don't think people they see it and they don't understand that like this is all just still a giant test at this stage.
Yeah, one way to look at technology is to look at it as like you're rendering an image in successive levels of detail. So the first layer of the image is very, very blurry and things are out of place, and then with the next pass, it gets a bit more defined, and things kind of shift into place. And you do another pass and and eventually it's something that is refined and actually works.
Right.
But we're in uncharted territory with Starship. So it's not like nobody's ever made a fully reusable orbital rocket.
Right.
And that's really the critical breakthrough necessary for life to become multiplanetary. For us to become a true spacefaring civilization, we have to achieve full and rapid reusability.
Yeah.
So I call it rapidly reusable, reliable rockets.
R squared. Or R.
RRR.
Yeah.
Pirate. Space pirates.
There we go.
So,
and it's the thing that people need to remember is achieving orbit's been solved. I mean, you guys have been getting to orbit for a long time. Reusing it.
Getting to orbit at all was solved in the 50s.
I never said you were funded by AIPAC. I said your community is being used by AIPAC to try to influence Twitch policy. What if we are using AIPAC? What do you mean? Very Violet, we're the one using AIPAC. LeMayo, nope, you all got manipulated by Dan to go on his crusade. You are the ones being used. Oh, well, if you say so. Never mind then. All right.
50s.
Right.
I mean, or, so I really don't think there's another point in an expendable rocket, in my opinion. Or at least I think the math clearly demonstrates that there is no point in an expendable rocket. You have to achieve reusability. We have reusability in cars, we have it in airplanes, we have it in bicycles, horses.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to not have reusability in any other form of transport. Boats. It would be insane to chuck a boat away after every trip.
Right.
But this is how rockets have worked for the vast majority of time. In fact, SpaceX is still the only rocket that has any reusability with Falcon 9.
Right.
So with Falcon 9, we bring the boosters back. We refly them frequently. We bring the fairings back. We refly those. It's only the upper stage that is expended.
Right.
Now, Falcon 9 does not qualify as rapidly reusable,
right?
Because most of the time the booster is landing on a ship in the ocean.
Right. So it'll take a few days to get it back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's speeding up like crazy. I mean,
this video is one section where he talks about the engineering process.
What I'm trying to have us all just implement rigorously is the sort of 5-step process. First, make your requirements less dumb. Your requirements are definitely dumb. It does not matter who gave them to you. It's particularly dangerous if a smart person gave you the requirements, because you might not question them enough.
Yeah, you might take it as like gospel. Like, yes. I have to do this thing.
Everyone's wrong, no matter who you are. Everyone's wrong some of the time. So make your requirements less dumb. Then try very hard to delete the part or process. This is actually very important. If you're not occasionally adding things back in, you are not deleting enough. Right. The bias tends to be very strongly towards let's add this part or process step in case we need it. But you can basically make in-case arguments for so many things. And for a rocket that is trying to achieve, trying to be the first fully reusable rocket, there's never been a fully reusable rocket. People don't understand. Like, this is like the holy grail of rocketry. 100%. Okay. And So you really need, you have to run at tight margins, because if you don't run tight margins, you're gonna get nothing to orbit.
Right.
So you got to delete the parter process step, super important, and you can't like hedge your bets. That's why the quick fins, for example, do not fold down, because that's a whole extra mechanism that we don't need.
And then compensate for it by having strong enough engine authority to steer it in the lower atmosphere.
Actually, our simulations show we don't really need any extra engine authority. As long as the grid fins, basically follow the flow, they're not really disturbing the flow. It's really neither here nor there.
So
as long as they don't have a high angle of attack, it doesn't matter.
A few degrees or something, or within a degree or two.
So, but in any case, it's something we could add later.
Right.
So now these grid fins are humongous. We'll go see them.
Okay, this section is better than I think most anything else I've heard him talk about. But maybe I've heard him talk about the fucking Cybertruck or whatever too much. So okay.
They're like a dinosaur bear trap. Okay, it's like a bear trap or a dinosaur. That's what these things look like. And if you have a whole mechanism for folding them, that's like clearly a part that we don't need.
Yep.
So this was a good design decision.
Although I mean, they still also sound kind of basic, but at least it's not crazy retarded shit. Check this one.
This is absolutely brilliant. Are you ready for this? Let's go.
I believe you chose a stainless steel for the vehicle. I could be wrong, but what were the technical and engineering reasons for that? And don't stint on the details.
Because a lot of people intuitively, they would think of steel as being heavy, and rockets need to be light. So, well, that seems a pretty odd choice, picking a heavy sounding thing for rockets, especially orbital rockets that need to be very light. The nature of Earth's gravity being quite strong and a dense atmosphere means that you really have to have an incredibly good propellant mass percentage, and you have to have very efficient engines to get anything to orbit at all. We started off with an advanced composite. So intuitively, if you ask people who understand materials, they will say, we want to make something incredibly light. They'll say, probably you want to use state-of-the-art carbon fiber composite. That's usually what they'll say. And that's what we started out with, which was really a very advanced carbon fiber. Actually, it was only made in very small quantities. It cost $130 per kilogram, so it was very expensive material. And there are some challenges if you want to make the primary structure out of carbon fiber, which is that you've got to contain cryogenic fluid, and you need.
Okay, I don't know how to explain this. I don't know how to express this. Okay, when I say that I want to hear somebody speak like intelligently about a thing, or just like say something where I feel like you understand what you're talking about. Okay, okay. Right now, Elon is talking about how he says something that's kind of basic, but maybe people don't understand, right? You obviously, steel is good because it's strong, but it's really heavy. And then he gets more specific. Well, there are certain composite materials you can look into, that will give you their light and they're transportable, and then he talks about like exceptions to this, like it can be really expensive, really, right? It sounds like right now, what he's talking about here is something that it feels like, because he's not just talking about a couple discrete things. He's like interweaving and connecting a lot of pieces of information relating to rocketry. So this right now sounds like the most I've ever heard him speak where I'm like, oh, he seems like he actually really does understand this. I don't know what it is. I'm listening to him talk about AI, his car shit, or 90% of the time I hear him like speaking somewhere, it just sounds like he's saying random middle manager. I shouldn't even say middle manager, because those guys do need to understand to some extent what they're interfacing with. But okay, this sounds like he actually knows what he's talking about.
Gas in sort of what's called ullage gas, pressurization gas, to pressurize the propellants in the main tanks and feed the engine turbopumps with a given inlet pressure. So if you have a carbon fiber tank, because it tends to be porous, and also
so he's talking about different trade-offs between different materials, efficiencies he needs to reach, like different types of okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. At least for SpaceX, then it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Maybe, hopefully.
Actually, flammable.
This is all business stuff right now, right? No, it's not just business. It's business and physics, right? And in engineering, in quotes, right?
When subject to warm gaseous pure oxygen, because our vehicle is autonomously pressurized. So the oxygen tank is pressurized with gaseous oxygen, and the fuel tank is pressurized with gaseous methane. The resin and the carbon in the carbon fiber is potentially flammable with hot, pure oxygen gas. So you'd have to have some kind of liner. So when you look at the full mass and complexity of a carbon fiber system, you start having things that reduce the mass efficiency of carbon fiber, such as having an inert liner and being worried about gas permeating through the carbon fiber and that kind of thing. So, but it's still an okay choice. However, we were having a lot of trouble making progress with carbon fiber because this is a 9-meter diameter rocket. And so you're wrapping carbon fiber with typically, in this case, 60 or 220 plies, depending upon where you are in the tank.
Maybe it's because SpaceX was a pure passion thing for him, Tesla less so, and Twitter was purely about reactionary politics. Maybe his passion on it correlates to his ability to understand it. Maybe. I don't know what I've heard him say in terms of Tesla, where it sounds like he's a really good understanding of cars. But I will say this. I was the only person to say this 4 years ago, and I will still say this as much as I hate him, and I think he's probably one of the most damaging figures in America right now. SpaceX and Tesla are two unbelievably amazing brands, regardless of how shit Tesla cars are now in terms of Q and everything. I genuinely feel like Tesla pushed like electric cars forward by 10 or 20 years. Like I feel like nobody was really taking electric cars seriously until Tesla came about, and even today, I'm still not sure if people are taking electric cars as seriously as they could be. Like Tesla pushed that industry forward a lot, and SpaceX, the idea of America, even if the rockets weren't able to be caught or land back on Earth, it's cool that we launch rockets again. That's really good. Destiny, it just feels like he's regurgitating things people have explained to him. In this right here, none of this feels like it's regurgitated. He's speaking about particular problems, particular issues they ran into with particular materials and like reasons why they don't work and exploring alternatives. This sounds like what he's talking about right here. Everything he's talked about so far, to me, it sounds like he really understands what he's talking about right now. Like you could ask him a specific question about any of this and he could tell you why a particular material was good. It was too expensive, he said, for one, or why one didn't work. It was too flammable, right? This sounds like this is not a memorized, I don't believe that this is just memorized shit from his engineers. It sounds like he has an understanding, some level of understanding of what he's talking about. I don't know how to express that or why, but this is what it sounds like he is understanding. Yeah.
And you have to get all of those wrappings accurate and not to leave bubbles or separator sheets or all the things that typically happen, or you've got to scrap the whole thing. And then you've got to get good master properties, put it in an autoclave and put it under a lot of pressure. And then you need a gigantic autoclave because it's a 9-meter diameter with a 70-meter long boost.
If you think that Elon is dumb, you 100% have deep partisan brain rot. No, the issue that's so difficult for me to figure out is that I don't understand how people, and maybe this is the human, maybe it's more normal than I'm giving it credit for. I don't understand how people can be so intelligent in some areas and so fucking unbelievably stupid in other areas. It's very hard for me to understand that. People have no humility when it comes to exploring unrelated fields, or they don't seem to carry any of the epistemic lessons from one field to the next, right? Oh, in order to learn this thing about rockets, I had to do all this research, all this reading, all this studying, all this engineering, all this CEOing. I had to do all this. And then when it comes to something else, like, oh, medicine and pharmacology, well, I know all of that immediately because I read a tweet. But I'm sure that Elon has seen tweets or things where people try to step in and tell him about rockets where he's like, this is so cringe, bro. What the fuck? You don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I don't know.
Stage. So this is autoclave from hell. And we just weren't making rapid progress with this material. So then the next step, the other two materials worth considering are high strength form of aluminium, or potentially steel. So for Falcon 9, we use aluminum lithium, which is the highest strength to weight aluminum alloy that you can use. Very difficult to weld. But that's what we use for the primary structure of Falcon 9. But the problem is it's very difficult to weld. You need to do friction stir welding, and also the material cost is quite high. That's sort of material cost. I'll give that.
Do you actually think he doesn't realize that, or that he's more calculated at the way he's acting? I have no idea. I don't know.
On the sort of $40 a kilogram level.
I just want to interrupt really quick to say that was a pretty good rundown.
Okay, thank you. All right, at least I know he's not retarded when it comes to rockets. Okay, that's all I wanted. I just needed a video of him speaking where it sounded like he understood because everything I've heard him speak about recently when it comes to tech and shit, he just sounds fucking retarded. Like he actually sounds like an idiot, like a guy pulled from Twitter who's like, "This is so cool," and just like talking random shit. This sounds like he really knows what he's talking about, though. Thank you. Okay.